Welcome to Fox Soul's Black Report, your daily source for Black news, views, and opinions. Today is Tuesday, May 31st, and I'm Mimi Brown.
I'm Romeo.
I'm Demi Lobo, and on today's report, the Justice Department is now launching an investigation into why it took so long for police to enter a school in Uvalde, Texas. Parents demanding answers as to why it took 1 hour before attempting to take out a gunman. Meanwhile, Vice President Kamala Harris is giving a motivational message for those mourning the lives lost in the Buffalo, New York mass shooting, amid the last of the funerals of the 10 people killed in that shooting. A pregnant woman is in stable condition after being shot by Kansas City police during an arrest, and we have that story.
Plus, Russell Simmons, and he's slamming prosecutors in defense of Young Thug and Gunner, and comedians Monique and Dale Hughley trade insults online about contract negotiations. Yes, we have all that and so much more. This is our voice and our truth, so let's get it.
The Justice Department now launching an investigation into why it took so long for police to enter that school in Uvalde, Texas, while a gunman was shooting 19 children and 2 teachers. The city's mayor asking the DOJ to investigate why officers waited over an hour before attempting to take out the gunman. Texas Department of Safety officials say as many as 19 local and federal officers were in the hallway during much of the shooting, but the commander on the scene decided not to immediately go into the classroom because he believed the shooter had barricaded himself and was no longer a threat to others. Meanwhile, President Biden was in Uvalde over the weekend. He and First Lady joined the grieving community at a makeshift memorial dedicated to the victims. The community welcomed the presidential visit, but urged the president to make changes necessary to end these violent acts. I think the more time goes by, still so many questions as to, just what happened in that time. And I'm really glad that the DOJ will look into it. So some of the things they're going to look into is whether the active shooter protocols were followed, the training of the police officers, and whether there was equipment, like tactical equipment, available at the scene. So they'll dive a little deeper in some of those questions, which, I don't think we'll ever get the answer to, that satisfactory answer to, because they'll never bring back the kids. But at least they'll probe into what exactly went wrong that day. And meanwhile, there are 2 funerals taking place today, the first of many. There'll be more over the next 2 weeks. And, I'm glad that President Joe Biden, he went and he visited the memorials with the parents, and him and First Lady Jill, they were there and they were able to, pay their respects. I definitely think, he's in a tough position because what can you do? He said that, I don't have the power to just outlaw guns totally, but he is going to meet with members of the Republican Party and see if they can come up with something that both bipartisan that will
just make
help.
things better.
Help,
the situation.
if possible, if that's even a possibility.
Right. Mimi, I think the problem is that there is no, it's similar, not similar to when we want Joe Biden to erase a large lump sum of student loan debt. There is not a one button that can make everything perfect. And we know that that would just be irrational to feel like we can make that happen. But there are certain things in place, like Joe Biden is saying, like attempting to try to take baby steps to prevent this from further happening. We talked about the shooter in this situation, the shooter in the Buffalo, New York mass shooting. They were both young kids that should not have had guns, and so if there is some type of way to prevent these young men like this who have possibly had mental health issues from getting guns, that could potentially help. Also, the Uvalde, Texas shooting, back to that for a second, they did up their security. They did do so many other security protocols. So I'm wondering, what are they going to find from this? Because they've already done everything that they thought that they were supposed to be doing almost a year ago, all these different security protocols. So are you just going to find out that everybody just forgot what they learned?
I think that's what they're going to look into.
And, exactly. Yeah. And so I just feel like, give us something that we really want to know right now. Give us something that we really want to know, not just, oh, we're sorry that we ignored everything that we just learned a year ago.
Well, it's going to be kind of hard to do because the ultimate thing will be able to change some gun laws. Okay, this guy was 18 years old. The one in Buffalo, New York was 18 years old. They can buy other things. They can't buy beer, they can't buy things like that, but they can go buy a gun, an AR-15. It makes no sense at all. And now you think about just Uvalde, Texas, where they're talking about raising the school possibly. And what I mean by that is tearing it down because students don't want to go back there.
How can you?
And it has happened before with other schools where they had shootings at. So now people's lives are going to be changed forever. And you have to think about these kids. How can we make it better for our kids? Because at the end of the day, like I'm hearing, yes, the back door may have been propped open and that's how the guy got through there. But what other steps are we going to take once the guy's inside the building? They did a lot of things wrong in my eyes and a lot of people's eyes, and they have to fix that moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, building, flattening the school, that's okay, but there are millions of kids in the world now that are afraid to go to any school in the world as well.
Yeah,
so yes, that's a big problem. Yeah, that yes, they could flatline that one particular school because I too would be afraid to go back to that particular school. But there are kids in California, in Chicago, around the world, the nation, that are also afraid to go to school, and so that is the bigger problem.
You know, and just to get back to really quick about how the United States has this mass shooting problem, there have been other countries that have had problems with mass shooting and they banned weapons. Just for an example, really quick, and there was a British gunman who killed 16 people in 1987. They banned semi-automatic weapons, and now that country, Britain, the UK, has one of the lowest death rates for gun totals in the world, right? And so in Australia, they did the same thing. The same goes for Germany, Canada, New Zealand. The United States is the only place where mass shootings aren't met with change. And unless we continue to unless we don't change, we will continue to see this. And kids, like you just said, Demi, will be afraid to go to school each and every day just because the people who are supposed to be protecting them aren't doing anything about it.
And there's big money in the NRA in guns and stuff, so you know, they're looking out for the betterment of themselves.
Of the money,
so it's not the majority of the people. We'll see how this turns out. In the aftermath of the Uvalde shooting, schools around the nation are beefing up their security, like we were just talking about. Now, school officials around the nation are taking measures to fear these other copycat shootings that could take place between now and the end of the school year. Some school districts, like Duval County in Jacksonville, Florida, they're banning backpacks as well as large handbags through Friday, which is the last of the school. So, for instance, in El Paso, Texas, where a gunman killed 23 Latinos in a Walmart back in 2019, school officials have received a number of death threats. As a result, the school's police force has also beefed up their patrols.
Meanwhile, the GoFundMe campaign has raised $2.5 million for the children of the teacher killed in Uvalde's shooting. We're talking about Irma Garcia, who died alongside the others during the shooting. Days later, her husband, Joe Garcia, died of cardiac arrest. Many are saying he died of a broken heart. The couple had 4 children ranging in age of 12 to 23. The GoFundMe campaign was only originally asking for $10,000.
And the last of the funerals for the 10 people killed in the Buffalo grocery store mass shooting is sparking a call to action. Vice President Kamala Harris and Reverend Al Sharpton attended the funeral for 86-year-old Ruth Whitfield. Harris told mourners it's time for Americans to stand up to those who perpetuate violence in the country.
There's a through line. What happened here in Buffalo, in Texas, in Atlanta, in Orlando? What happened at the synagogues? And so this is a moment that requires all good people, all God-loving people, to stand up and say, we will not stand for this. Enough is enough. We will come together based on what we all know we have in common, and we will not let those people who are motivated by hate separate us or make us feel fear.
Ruth Whitfield was the oldest victim of the racist attack. She was inside the supermarket after visiting her husband of 68 years from a nursing home when the gunman opened fire.
In Washington, a bipartisan group of senators are meeting today on a legislative proposal in response to the Buffalo and Uvalde mass shootings. They hope that the Zoom call will lead to a basic framework for some kind of gun control measure by next week. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell has asked Texas Senator John Cornyn to negotiate with Democrats. Now, sources do say that President Biden is slightly optimistic that the group can strike a deal. Last week, a group of 8 senators met in Senator Chris Murphy's home to organize those talks.
The White House is denying reports that President Biden is planning to cancel $10,000 in student loan debt per borrower. A spokesman came out Friday after the Washington Post story said the plan would apply to people who earned less than $150,000 last year. That story also said it would apply to married couples who made less than $300,000. A White House spokesman said no decision by the president has been made. Now, according to education data, Black college graduates have an average of $52,000 in student debt, which is $25,000 more than their white counterpart. And over half of Black borrowers owe more than their net worth. There has been a pause in student loan payments since the start of the pandemic, but that freeze is expected to end in August. And of course, when we talk about student loan debt, Demi always sits straight up for this situation. But, we feel like it should definitely be more. Like we thought around the ballpark of $50,000. But now if you're saying if it's going to be $10,000, but you're putting this restriction on per household, it kind of reminds me what they were doing for the pandemic when they were passing out those checks, right?
Yeah.
Through the household, I think you could make over $150 or something like that. So I don't know. Part of me puts this on the back burner with all the things that's going on in our country right now. But if it's coming to an end, they have to make that decision again. If universities and colleges have survived this long without people paying those debts that they owe, I think they can extend that or wipe it out totally. It's what's going to help our generational generational debt gap, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. I don't know why they would be denying this story, because it's such a story that's giving people like Demi and I with these massive student loan, is giving us hope that Biden is hearing us and that he's coming to rescue some of the people who have these massive debts. We know, like you just said, Romeo, that canceling student loan debt is the quickest way to narrow that racial wealth gap. And we're dealing with high gas prices, inflation. I mean, right now, that's the least that we can do is alleviate some of the student loan debt.
You guys know that I am a large proponent of talking about student loan debt, but for some reason, it just doesn't, Romeo, back to what you were saying, feel right. First thing, before I just talk about my rant here, that this is a very big deal because we have grandparents who are, Representative Ayanna Pressley, she tweeted that there are grandmothers in her district who are still paying back student loan debt on Social Security and a fixed income, which those are like just magnets that just don't even match at all. But, however, I feel like right now, the goal should just not, I don't even care about my student loans right now when people are dying, when children are dying. We talked about the artist who's creating the caskets for these young 19 children, that right now it would be great for the Biden administration to find, we want to first talk about student loan debt, to handle that, take care of that, boom. So when something like this happens, we can work on this, but we can't because there's so much that hasn't been done. So I don't really even care about student loan debt right now. I feel like we should be worrying about the 2 mass shootings, and that should be what's the main thing on his plate right now to deal with, not other things. I don't understand he's a president, but I don't really care about student loan debt right now when young kids are dying in the world, and Black people.
Agree.
Absolutely. All right. Minneapolis will pay 2 people injured by officers during the George Floyd protests $1.2 million. The settlements will go to a Nashville freelance photographer, Linda Tirado, and St. Paul resident, Virgil Lee Jackson. Tirado lost sight in her left eye after an officer fired a rubber bullet at her while she was covering the protests. She will get $600,000. Jackson will receive $645,000 after Minneapolis SWAT officers repeatedly shocked him using a taser. Now, Jackson was in the same parking lot as Jaleel Stallings, the Army vet who shot at cops with his weapon. Stallings said he did not realize the people he was shooting at were officers. Body cam footage shows the SWAT team driving around shooting randomly at people with rubber bullets. They fired at Stallings and Jackson as they were standing in a parking lot.
Baltimore State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby putting out a list of more than 300 cops with credible issues. So many of these officers are still being called to testify in court, but a court order forced the release of that list. The list, it includes officers under suspicion for theft, planting evidence, perjury, and corruption. So attorneys for the city have had concerns for many years about cops with integrity issues being allowed to testify in court. Defense attorneys are now calling on Mosby to release more information about those cops on that list.
Georgia Senate candidate Herschel Walker has people in his state scratching their heads, and over here too, after a comment he made a few days after Uvalde, Texas school shooting. Take a look.
It's the person wielding that weapon. Cain killed Abel. And that's the problem that we have. And I said, what we need to do is look into how we can stop those things. He talked about doing a disinformation. What about getting a department that can look at young men that's looking at women They're looking at just social media. What about doing that, looking into things like that, and we can stop that way. But yet they want to just continue to talk about taking away your constitutional rights. And I think there's more things we need to look into. This has been happening for years, and the way we stop it by putting money into the mental health field.
Walker often trips over his words and makes sometimes no sense at all. Now, his campaign has worked hard to keep him away from reporters' microphones. He avoided debates against the Republican primary opponent, but Democrats say they are eager to see what Walker takes when he takes the debate stage against incumbent Senator Raphael Warnock this fall. I don't think anyone's writing that for him or he's going off script, but I mean, he has us all wondering, like, what is he talking about?
No idea.
No idea. No clue whatsoever. It's that line, Cain killed Abel, for me. What are you talking about, sir? I have no idea what that means in the context of anything that he just said.
Yeah.
At all.
And I don't know who does. And who's funding this man is the question, though, because when you listen to that, who in their right mind can understand what he said, and also who's behind him that's telling him, hey, this is a good idea what you're doing. You should be a senator.
Yeah. All right, well, several school teachers in Rochester, New York are on leave after exchanging racist text messages about students. One school in particular has a large Black and Hispanic population. Students discovered a series of texts that contained obscenity and wished one girl would beat up another. The discovery comes after Rochester school officials began an investigation into allegations that a white teacher told his 7th grade class of mostly Black kids to pick cotton seeds out of cotton. The same teacher told his students to put handcuffs on during a discussion about slavery.
We have an update on a story that we told you about last week. A California school district has been unable to identify who subjected a Black assistant principal to racist graffiti messages and on social media. The investigation took 6 months and 45 witnesses were interviewed. Elise Verscher, she resigned because she says the school district failed to protect her from harassment. Verscher, she says that social media posts by students called her racial slurs. She also says that students spray painted the N-word 5 times on the wall of her classroom across from the parking spot. District officials say they were unable to identify a student or a staff member responsible for the harassment. Verscher says that she stepped down as vice president because the racial hostility was too stressful.
The Kansas City Police Department is under fire after shooting an unarmed pregnant Black woman 5 times. Now, the shooting happened Friday. Missouri State Highway Patrol says officers were trying to arrest the man and woman in connection with the stolen vehicle. The witness who shot this video says the woman had her hands up before officers opened fire 5 times.
I've never seen, I'm from Louisiana, I'm from Arkansas, but I stopped here to get some gas, y'all, and to get some ice cream for my kids, y'all, and my son just watched this. My 1-year-old son just watched this, my 10-year-old son just watched this, and my 13-year-old son just watched this happen. The man ran, she was finna cooperate, she got scared, she ran down there, they shot her. 1, 2, 3, 4.
The witness says before the shooting, cops ordered 2 people in the vehicle to get out. She says the man got out and ran away. 3 cops followed him. She says when the woman got out of the car, police told her to get on the ground. The witness says that the woman told them she was pregnant and could not get on the ground. The woman reportedly told cops there was a gun in the car. When police approached her, she moved a couple steps away from them. That's when cops opened fire on the woman. Investigators say the woman was taken to an area hospital with serious injuries. She is in stable condition. You know, when I think about this situation, this Black woman being shot down like this, and telling them, hands up, screaming top of her lungs that she's not in a danger, right? Then I go back to what happened to the white man that shot all those people in Buffalo when he had a gun in his hand still, after you knowing that he killed 10 people, and yet he was able to be taken to jail peacefully. This is when we have a problem in our country saying, what's wrong with this picture? What's wrong with that video that we just showed you? There's a lot wrong with it.
I mean, you can't even be a Black person. You're just in America without fearing for your life. Not only a Black woman in America without fearing for your life, but then here you are, a Black pregnant woman being shot by police officers is the most awful combination that you could ever thinking about. And it's just really, when we go back to our first story talking about action items that need to be a priority, I don't even know what could prevent this, because this just seems like an awful human being that has a disregard for a woman and Black life, because I don't even know, I'm sure that this was not taught anywhere in training for a police officer.
You know, when you listen to that witness and the trauma in her voice, it brings it so home for you. And to hear her talk about her kids and the ages of her children, the trauma from her, the trauma that her kids are going to face. I mean, it's just like you said, Demi, it's like you have no regard for Black life, the inhumanity of it all. It just screams, I could care less about you or anyone else who's watching. The thing that shocked me the most about this, and I don't even know why I say shocked, because nothing shocks me anymore when it comes to some of these stories, but while she was on the ground, she said she couldn't get on the ground because she was pregnant. After they shot her 5 times, they still handcuffed her. You know, so it's like, what was she going to do? Where was she going? What was going to happen that you had to handcuff a pregnant woman after shooting her 5 times? And moving on, the governor of Louisiana and his lawyers watched the video of a Black motorist, Ronald Green, taking his final breath 6 months before prosecutors even knew the footage existed. Ronald Green was beaten to death by state troopers after a traffic stop in 2019. The video of his violent death would not be released to detectives and medical examiners for another 6 months. It took another 2 years before it was released to the public. The governor is distancing himself from allegations of a cover-up, but an Associated Press investigation says the governor did not act urgently to get the footage into the hands of the people in charge after seeing the video. It's been nearly 3 years since Green's death, and no one has been criminally charged in that case.
A Michigan man is facing hate crime charges after he allegedly threatened Black shoppers with a baseball bat at a suburban Detroit mall. Police say Jason Edward Lucas approached Black shoppers at a mall in Dearborn, Michigan, yelling racial slurs at them. He followed a pair of people into a parking lot and tried to hit them with his car. Lucas has been charged with 4 counts of felonious assault and 2 counts of ethnic intimidation. The ethnic offense charge can carry up to 2 years in prison and a $5,000 fine.
A Black Florida man suffering from mental illness died in jail last year. Now friends and family are demanding surveillance video of what happened to him be released. Kevin DeSear's family says he died in January, 10 days after he was involved in a physical confrontation with deputies at a Broward County jail. Police say DeSear, who is bipolar, harmed himself while he was being detained. They say when officers tried to stop him, he bit them. Jail officials say they placed DeSear in a restraint chair where he became unresponsive. DeSear was in jail for criminal mischief and felony marijuana possession. Now, Broward County officials say they will not release the video. They say they have completed their investigation to DeSear's death in June of last year. They handed their findings over to the DA, who closed the case with no criminal charges against deputies. Lawyers for the family are going to court to get the jail surveillance footage released.